You've always been the one who says yes. The one who bends over backward to help, even when it costs you time, energy, or peace of mind. You've believed that being nice is the shortcut to love, respect, and acceptance. You've told yourself, if I'm kind enough, people will notice. If I give enough, they'll care. But somewhere along the way, you start noticing cracks. People start taking what you give for granted. Invitations, favors, late-night texts, and emotional labor are accepted as if they're your obligation rather than your choice. And deep down, you feel a knot of frustration tightening in your chest, though you brush it off, convincing yourself it's just part of being a good person. But here's the truth you might not want to face. Being the perpetual nice one comes with a hidden cost. It's not always obvious, because society rewards politeness, compliance, and generosity. People smile and say, "You're such a kind soul," while quietly stepping over the boundaries you've set with subtle grace, or sometimes blatant disregard. That warmth that you radiate often becomes a vacuum for others' needs, leaving your own wants and desires quietly eroding. You start losing track of who you are outside of the expectations you meet for everyone else. The exhaustion builds, but you suppress it with a smile because after all, you're a nice person, and nice people don't complain. You might not even realize how much resentment is hiding behind that kindness until small incidents start cutting deeper than they should. A friend asks for a favor yet again, despite your repeated hints that you're stretched thin. A coworker repeatedly dumps extra work on your desk, assuming you'll handle it without question. A family member manipulates guilt and obligation to get their way. Each time, you give in. Each time, you rationalize it as being a good person. But every yes you offer chips away at your inner boundary, and slowly, subtly, you start to feel invisible. People love your generosity, but they don't love or respect your limits. Psychologically, this happens for a reason. When you are consistently giving without boundaries, you train others to expect your compliance. They learn that you are predictable, dependable, and available. Your kindness is no longer a gift. It becomes a standard they take for granted. And while you've been nurturing these relationships with the hope of being valued, the irony is cruel. The more you give without asserting yourself, the less people truly see the person behind the generosity. They see what you provide, not who you are. Emotionally, this dynamic is exhausting. You wake up tired not just from physical effort, but from the weight of constantly managing other people's expectations. You may even start questioning your own worth, wondering if your kindness is enough, if your efforts are being appreciated, or if your love is conditional. It's an invisible drain that chips away at confidence, self-esteem, and mental clarity. And the frustration mounts silently because you're supposed to be the nice one. You can't complain about being used. It would betray the very identity you've spent years building. But the cost isn't just emotional, it's relational. Relationships that should be reciprocal instead become one-sided. You give and give, and in return, you receive obligation, guilt-tripping, or even subtle manipulation. It's painful, but it's often invisible until the breaking point comes. That friend who always asks for help suddenly gets annoyed when you finally decline. That coworker who relied on you for deadlines suddenly becomes cold when you assert yourself. That family member who demanded your time becomes frustrated when you prioritize your needs. And in those moments, the truth hits you. The nice persona you cultivated isn't admired, it's exploited. It's not your fault. Being kind, helpful, and empathetic are wonderful traits. The problem is not the act of giving. It's the absence of boundaries that makes giving unsustainable. When you give without clarity, you inadvertently teach others to take your generosity for granted. The line between being genuinely helpful and being used becomes blurred, and you end up living a life dictated by other people's expectations rather than your own priorities. This is why, for so many, the breaking point comes quietly. A missed opportunity, an ungrateful response, a subtle betrayal. And that breaking point, while uncomfortable, is actually a revelation. Because once you recognize the cost, you start asking questions you never dared before. Who am I giving for? Whose approval am I chasing? And most importantly, what would happen if I stopped? What would happen if I finally put myself first without fear of judgment or guilt? This is the stage where emotional awareness meets empowerment. The frustration, resentment, and invisible burden you've carried suddenly start to make sense. They are signals, not failures, showing you that your kindness is being mismanaged, not that your heart is wrong. This realization is crucial. It's the moment where the nice one begins to understand that their own value isn't measured by perpetual compliance or self-sacrifice. Your time, energy, and emotional labor are finite resources, and protecting them isn't selfish, it's necessary. From here, the path starts to shift. Instead of silently absorbing manipulation, you start noticing patterns. Instead of expecting gratitude, you start expecting respect. Instead of fearing conflict, you recognize it as a tool to preserve your dignity. This is the first step toward reclaiming your life from the subtle exploitation that has long been disguised as friendship, love, or loyalty. At the end of this awakening, the nice one begins to understand a paradox. By stopping being just nice, they don't become unkind, they become fully themselves. They don't reject people. They reject the imbalance that has silently drained them. And this shift, though initially uncomfortable, is the doorway to authentic connections, self-respect, and emotional freedom. The moment you finally say no is the moment everything changes, and you begin to see the world, and the people around you, in stark, unflinching clarity. It's almost like a lens that has been fogged with years of habitual compliance suddenly clears, and the faces you once thought you knew so well start to look different. That friend who always leaned on you without thinking, suddenly becomes impatient, defensive, or even aggressive when you assert a boundary. That coworker who relied on your willingness to pick up extra tasks now treats your refusal as if it's a personal attack. It's jarring, confusing, and even a little painful, but it's also enlightening. Because the truth is that not everyone will like the realignment of your boundaries, and that's okay. You start to notice patterns you never saw before. Some people react with anger, as if your refusal challenges their sense of entitlement. Others respond with guilt-tripping or subtle manipulation, reminding you of all the times you owed them your compliance. And some people, surprisingly, respect your boundaries immediately, offering admiration that feels both foreign and validating. The contrast is stark, and it forces you to reconsider all of your relationships through a more honest lens. You begin to see who values you for who you are, not for what you can provide. This realization is uncomfortable because it disrupts the story you've told yourself about loyalty, friendship, and love. It challenges the assumption that kindness should always be rewarded, and it exposes a hard truth. Some people will only care as long as they are benefiting. The emotional tension in this stage is undeniable. You may feel fear, worry, or even guilt, especially if you've been conditioned to equate niceness with morality. It's natural to question yourself. Am I being too harsh? Am I overreacting? Am I unkind? But deep down, there's a flicker of empowerment, a tiny voice reminding you that your needs, time, and emotional energy are valid. Each time you assert yourself, each boundary you hold, that voice grows stronger. It becomes easier to distinguish between those who accept your authenticity and those who resist it. Storytelling helps you understand the psychology at play here. People are wired to resist change in others, especially when it disrupts the familiar pattern they've relied upon. Your sudden refusal to be perpetually accommodating can feel threatening to someone who has grown accustomed to your compliance. It triggers defensive behaviors, sometimes subtle and sometimes explosive. They may attempt to push back, belittle your choices, or even withdraw entirely. And in doing so, they reveal something essential about their character, their dependence on you as a crutch rather than their capacity to respect you as an equal. Yet, this stage is not just about discovering toxicity, it's also about discovering respect and loyalty. Some people will step forward, surprised and even inspired, to honor your boundaries. They might say things like, "I never realized how much you were carrying for everyone else," or, "Thank you for being honest about what you need." These reactions are quieter, less dramatic, but infinitely more meaningful. They signal a new kind of relationship, one based on mutual respect rather than exploitation. It's a reminder that the world is not uniformly hostile. It's just that the nice one has been conditioned to blur the lines between genuine care and coerced compliance. Practically, this is where strategy becomes invaluable. You start learning how to anticipate reactions without internalizing them. You recognize the difference between legitimate disappointment and manipulative backlash. You understand that your refusal to comply is not rejection of the person. It is a necessary recalibration of your own life. The nice one learns to hold their ground firmly yet compassionately, understanding that discomfort in others often reflects their dependence on old patterns rather than your supposed unkindness. As you navigate this phase, you also notice subtle, almost invisible consequences. Relationships that were one-sided start to dissolve, sometimes quietly and sometimes dramatically. Some friends fade into the background, unable or unwilling to meet you in your new reality. Others may confront you directly, challenging your boundaries or attempting to guilt you into old behaviors. And while this can feel destabilizing, it's also clarifying. It separates the people who are there for the right reasons from those who were never truly present in the first place. Emotionally, this is both painful and liberating. There's sorrow in realizing some people weren't who you thought they were. There's anger in acknowledging how long you allowed yourself to be undervalued. But there's also exhilaration, a sense of liberation that comes from finally being seen for who you are rather than what you provide. It's as though a veil has been lifted, and suddenly, every interaction is more honest, every relationship more authentic. You begin to appreciate that boundaries are not a wall, they are a bridge to healthier connections and a stronger sense of self. In this stage, reflection becomes essential. You start asking deeper questions. Who deserves my time and energy? Who respects my choices even when they challenge their expectations? What patterns am I repeating? And how can I reinforce the behaviors that honor my well-being? The answers are often uncomfortable but necessary. The nice one realizes that asserting themselves is not cruelty, it is clarity. It is the essential step toward emotional freedom, self-respect, and genuine connection. By the end of this phase, the pattern becomes clear. The world reacts to your newfound firmness in ways you could never have anticipated. Some people retreat, some resist, and some rise to meet the authenticity you now demand. Each reaction is a reflection not of your morality, but of theirs. And through this process, you gain a profound insight. Being nice is not about endless sacrifice. Being kind is not about suppressing your needs. True kindness and true strength comes when you honor both your generosity and your boundaries. This is the awakening of the nice one, the recognition that you cannot control others' reactions, but you can control how much of yourself you allow to be exploited. The tipping point may be uncomfortable, dramatic, or even painful, but it is the moment where authenticity begins to replace performative kindness. And in that space, you start seeing the real world and the real people around you with unflinching clarity. A clarity that will guide every choice you make from this point forward. Once you begin to recognize the patterns of exploitation and manipulation, the next step is reclaiming your power. This is where the nice one stops being a passive participant in their own life and starts making conscious, intentional choices. Reclaiming your power doesn't mean becoming harsh or unkind. It means learning to balance generosity with self-respect. It's about understanding that your time, energy, and emotional labor are not infinite, and that prioritizing yourself is not selfish, it is essential. The first step is defining clear boundaries. You start by identifying what you are willing to give and what crosses the line. This could be as simple as saying no to last-minute favors, refusing to take responsibility for others' emotional burdens, or protecting your personal time from unnecessary obligations. Each boundary you establish acts as a declaration. Your kindness has limits, and your value does not depend on constant compliance. Boundaries become your compass, guiding how you interact with friends, family, and colleagues without losing your integrity. Next comes the practice of assertiveness. The nice one often confuses kindness with passivity, assuming that saying no or expressing personal needs is confrontational. In reality, assertiveness is the art of communicating your needs firmly yet respectfully. It's a recognition that you have the right to be heard and honored, and that others can respond to that truth without your guilt dictating their reactions. Practicing this regularly strengthens your confidence and reduces the anxiety that previously accompanied every act of refusal. Another crucial aspect is emotional awareness. You begin to notice your own feelings before automatically prioritizing someone else's. When irritation, exhaustion, or resentment starts to build, you pay attention instead of ignoring it. These feelings are signals, guiding you to take action before your emotional reserves run dry. By honoring your emotions, you prevent small annoyances from snowballing into larger patterns of burnout and resentment. This creates a healthier internal ecosystem where your well-being is no longer sacrificed for the sake of pleasing others. Reclaiming power also requires redefining relationships. You start evaluating connections based on mutual respect rather than habit or obligation. Some relationships naturally dissolve when they no longer serve balance and authenticity. This is not failure, it's realignment. Others may require honest conversations, where you express what you need moving forward and observe how people respond. Those who respect your boundaries are the ones worth keeping, while those who resist or belittle your autonomy reveal themselves as unsupportive. By letting go of imbalance, you create space for genuine, reciprocal connections. At the same time, you cultivate self-compassion. Transitioning from the nice one to a strong, boundary-conscious individual is uncomfortable. Guilt may try to creep back in, whispering that you are being selfish or unkind. Counter these thoughts with affirmation. Setting limits is a form of care for both yourself and others. Self-compassion allows you to act from strength rather than fear, reinforcing the mindset that personal boundaries are essential for healthy, sustainable relationships. Finally, you integrate the lessons into everyday life. You make choices aligned with your values and priorities. You become selective with your energy, discerning where to invest your time and effort. You celebrate the small victories, saying no without guilt, asserting your needs, and experiencing the respect that follows. Each act reinforces the shift from passive niceness to empowered generosity, where kindness is deliberate, intentional, and sustainable. By the end of this journey, you realize that the transformation is profound. You are no longer defined by what others expect from you. You give because you choose to, not because you feel obligated. You care because it aligns with your values, not because you fear judgment. The nice one has evolved into someone who is strong, self-respecting, and authentic, a person whose generosity is powerful precisely because it is consciously managed and fiercely protected. After reclaiming your power and establishing boundaries, you begin to notice subtle but profound changes in your life. The tension that once weighed heavily on your shoulders starts to ease, and interactions that used to drain you now feel manageable. You begin to recognize that being strong doesn't mean shutting people out, it means interacting from a place of clarity and self-respect. Every time you say no without guilt or assert your needs without fear, you reinforce a new identity, one that is authentic, empowered, and unshakable. This stage is about reflection and awareness. You start observing which relationships thrive when honesty and boundaries are introduced, and which ones falter. The people who respect your limits become anchors, showing genuine care and adaptability. Those who resist or react negatively reveal their dependency on old patterns and self-interest. Rather than feeling resentment, you now view these reactions as informative. They help you understand the true nature of your connections, allowing you to invest energy wisely. Emotionally, you feel lighter. The invisible load of always accommodating others begins to lift. You notice a newfound confidence in interactions, a sense that your worth is no longer contingent on endless giving. You start to take pleasure in choosing kindness intentionally rather than out of obligation. Life feels more balanced, and your energy is spent where it truly matters. This stage also cultivates resilience. You realize that discomfort or conflict is no longer something to fear. It is a natural response to change. By standing firm in your choices, you reinforce your values and internal strength. The once tiring effort of being the nice one transforms into the empowering practice of being strong, kind, and self-respecting. A person whose generosity is meaningful because it is deliberate.